Hey guys, this is going to be a very interesting episode today. I have Noah with me. So, any of you watching me on video, you'll see beautiful Noah sat with me. So, bear with me on this one. The reason why Noah's with me is one, he's home with me today and I felt really compelled to record. And two, I want to talk about my birth story. So, having Noah here I thought was just vital to bring him on. He is doing great. He's now one. And part of my birth story, I think, was. I never really spoke about it until I did speak about it on the Wisdom of Womanhood podcast, but I never really got to really reflect on it, like really reflect on it. Who's that? So it's been kind of a real year of reflection, of just kind of reflecting on what it was like to have a baby. And I'll just let him down a sec. And to end up in a C-section. So I'm going to make this episode as short as I can because Noah is wanting to go off and explore, as babies do. And I had a 55-hour labor from start to finish. And I remember, oh God, it was like a Saturday night and then he was born Tuesday morning. So I'm just keep checking on him. I wanted to give everyone a bit of kind of clarity and to let go of that that stress about C-sections and how they are and what they're like. So I will say C-section recovery is a lot faster than I actually thought. They have you up on your feet straight away in the hospital and they want you to have a wee and a poo before they let you go. And I remember being home. Obviously I had to get Chris and my mom and dad to help me out of bed sometimes because that whole getting up with your muscles is really hard. Rolling over is great. But I remember Chris and my mum helping me a lot. And I remember thinking I was 10 days postpartum and I was like, wow. And even checking my scar, and my midwife would check my scar and I was like, oh my God, it's actually a really fast recovery considering it's 7 layers that they cut through. So I want to give you a bit of insight into what helped me through some of the hardest parts of my labor. And I will give a trigger warning if you're due to have a baby anytime soon. This is my birth story, part of it. And if you don't want to listen to parts of it, that's fine. But I will say, I did spend some time in the pool, in the bath, which I really wanted. I did want a water birth, but that obviously didn't happen because Noah was big. He was 10.5 pounds, 4.6 kilo roughly. And it was a lot, it was a lot to go through. But I used gas for the majority of it. I remember being at home and I was using all my hypnobirthing tools. Shout out to Lee Wen. Woohoo! She's my hypnobirthing coach. And I remember having the time at home and I was doing really well on the ball. I watched Matilda. Every time I listen to Matilda song now, I cry. It's such an anchor for my labor. So yeah, I'm talking about you. And I remember it being early hours Monday morning. So I've been in labor from Saturday night to Monday morning. It was 4 a.m. and my midwife took me to hospital. And we ended up waiting there for a while, got monitored. They gave me some gas to take off the edge because I was so tired. I've not slept properly since Friday night. So the gas really helped. I actually really liked the gas. And I used gas predominantly from getting up to 10 centimeters. But midwife wasn't happy with how I was progressing, how quick it was. So I remember having to get an emergency ambulance from the birth center back to the hospital because I will say, actually, I'm trying to go for this really quick, so bear with me. I remember being at the hospital and I was dying to get to the birth center because I knew that my oxytocin would boost there. I got to my beautiful midwife, Gay. I love her. She got me into the birth center and I remember getting there in the room and everything ramped up. Everything really ramped up. I spent a lot of time on the toilet. Chris got some videos of me really in primal mode, grunts, growls, everything. And I was a trooper. And you don't realize how strong you are until you've gone into labor. So I think at that point, it'd been a couple of hours and midwife wasn't really happy with how I was progressing. So I went back to hospital. My waters broke in the ambulance, actually. And they gave me the gas that's in the little vape thing. And then I got to hospital. They hooked me on I think it's pethidine, where they put it in and you press the button every time you have a contraction. And at this point, I'd said to Chris, I can't do it anymore. And I'll just get him up on me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Say hi. Say hi. There's you on the camera. See? So at this point, I remember saying to Chris before I went into labor, there's going to be a point where I'm about to give up. Okay. And at this point, your birth partner, if you've got one, or your midwife, is so important, like so important. They are, they're just their words of wisdom can change everything. So Chris said to me, this is the point where I'm going to tell you right now, you've got this. You've still got strength in you. And I got back to the hospital. They gave me 2 hours to push. My mum reckons it was longer. And he just wasn't budging. He was a big baby. He was big. I'm just going to grab him something. Come here. So I got to maybe 11 o'clock at night, maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night. And the nurses came in and said, okay, at this point, we're going to offer you an episiotomy and forceps. And I knew hands down that wasn't my plan. So my backup plan was a C-section always. And so I was like, no, can I have a C-section, please? And they said, yeah, of course. There's someone already in theatre. We'll get you down ASAP. So I had to sign all this paperwork. And you have no idea what you're signing. You have no clue. So went down for the C-section. And I will say the team were incredible. Absolutely incredible. They knew what they were doing. They were so beautiful and kind, supportive. My anaesthetist, I can't even say that word, anaesthetist, she was Irish and she was just very welcoming, fun, bubbly, made me feel safe. And I remember I was shaking, and that's my body, obviously, you know, going into a survival mechanism. I was shaking. I remember just being, is this normal? They were like, yes. And they were about to put the needle in. I have a contraction. I was like, please don't put the needle in. I'm having a contraction. And they were like, it's fine. We've got you. And I remember just all going, like, couldn't feel a thing. Got me on the theatre table and I kept falling asleep. Bless my heart. I kept snoring on the theatre table because I was so tired. I was so freaking tired from this at this point. Like, I'm literally about to meet my son. I'm like, on the theatre table. Like, it's insane. Like, obviously, like, I remember feeling a little guilty for that. Like, had to move through that. I was like feeling guilty that I'd fallen asleep. But I was so freaking tired. Like, give me a break. Anyways, they'd put a monitor on Noah's head and they were trying to get that off so they couldn't open me up as soon as they wanted. So I remember having a fear, though, and trigger warning for this. This isn't to scare anyone. A little fear in my head was, what if the anesthesia was off and I start to feel everything? But I guess that's a normal fear to have, and it wasn't that extreme. There was an occasion where when they were up inside me, it felt like the hands were here, like, because they're obviously moving things around to get him out. And he'd already kind of started to come down the birth canal. His head had crowned, so he had like an actual ring around his head. They had to kind of push him back up and bring him out. So I remember saying to the anaesthetist, I find it hard to breathe. I could breathe, but I felt it was like limited because everything's pushed up and your lungs are so squished. But she was so amazing, checking in with me. And one thing I remember is when he came out, I was just in tears. I could just hear him, and Chris was next to me and Chris held him. And Chris said, do you want him on you? And I remember I was so overwhelmed and I still felt like I couldn't breathe. I remember when he was born, I was so happy. I could hear him crying, and it was like, Chris said, do you want him on you? And I was like, I just couldn't imagine having him on my chest because I was just, look, hey. I was just overwhelmed on my chest. So Chris got skin on skin with him for that first bit, and then he's waving, say hi. You say hi? Hi. Mwah. So yeah, Chris had the first bit of time with him skin to skin. So he had that time, which I know was really important. And I didn't get that first hour of skin on skin, which is okay. I got a lot of it afterwards. I remember being in the hospital and I got put in a shared room, and I really wanted a private room because Chris couldn't stay with me. And I remember having to call the nurse to be able to get Noah out of his crib, and not been able to do that is really disempowering. So I remember just co-sleeping with him. He was in the hospital bed with me majority of the time. And then it is overwhelming, I will say. It's overwhelming. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You literally just had a baby, a C-section, you're recovering, you're drugged up to the nines for your pain relief. They want you to get up and wee. You're trying to breastfeed. You're trying to get your boobs to produce milk and colostrum, and they're giving you these little things to put your colostrum in. It's like, holy shit. Like, can we just take a breath? And you haven't got your husband there to help you. You're in a room full of other women with crying babies, and it's loud. You don't get any sleep. You know, at one point the nurses had to come in and tell everyone to be quiet because it was so loud. I was exhausted. You're in a whirlwind. You're in this love bubble. You're just so grateful and blessed. And Chris couldn't be there, obviously, because it's a shared room. But that's the only downside. I would say I would have loved a private room, but hey ho, it was what it was, and there wasn't any available. But I just know that in the moments of I was prepared. I'd done a lot of research, probably over researched. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I didn't want. I Chris knew all of that as well, which really helped. And I think that's really important to your birth partner is on board with you. And Noah's amazing. He's thriving. Your midwife is paramount. Like your connection with your midwife. So make sure when you are choosing a midwife, you gel with them, you connect with them. I've had friends who've changed their midwife midterm, and that's okay. You need to have a woman that or a man that you really connect with, that because they're literally with you at your most vulnerable time, your most raw time, and you're trusting them to take you through the journey. So one of the things I love about my midwife, Gay, is she asked me this question when she came to, and they visit you in New Zealand, like they visit you like almost every day in the first week, and then every week they're with you for like 6 weeks prior to postpartum, and you get so much support. I remember her saying to me, "Are you happy with your birth?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." I got to 10 centimeters by myself with the gas, and some women don't get there. This isn't to say, look at me. In my own journey, I'm proud of that. He was just so freaking big. His head was so freaking big. Like my pelvis probably was like, nah, ain't happening. He definitely didn't have shoulder dysplasia or anything like that. He just had a big head. I have a big head. Chris has a big head. And that was kind of like, I did try. He just was not budging. But like I said, he had that ring round his head where he'd crowned in the birth canal at the top. But yeah, I was a trooper, and finding that strength towards the end to push, I didn't know I had. It's like I reached the peak, and then Chris was like, "You've got it. You've got this. Keep going." And I did. And I did. And I pushed you out. Almost. Almost. So I did talk about my birth story with Shawi, probably December last year, maybe. And I wasn't feeling myself. I was obviously postnatal depression, anxiety, and yeah, a lot of it was maybe a little disjointed. And now I feel like I've had a good year to reflect, and there's a lot more to it. This is a very quick episode. But please ask me questions like, how was the C-section? How was the recovery? How do you feel afterwards? I know in the US, the mums that have to drive to their postnatal appointments, like my midwife comes to my house, literally comes to my house. I don't have to go far. I'm literally in my love bubble. I get to just enjoy Noah. And I had so much support around me, and the postnatal care here in New Zealand is second to none. Can't fault them at all. The only downside was I didn't have a private room in the hospital, but they haven't got the facilities for it. And that's a shame because, you know, some women do get private rooms, and after an emergency C-section, you do need that downtime. But yeah, that's my quick version of my birth story. There's a lot to it with my hypnobirthing journey and what I used to get through me those early stages in labor, and the anchors I used, the music I used, the apps I used. I remember the hypnobirthing side of it. I had my tracks on, and my midwife said you were definitely in the zone with your hypnobirthing tracks. I remember being like in two worlds. It feels like I was in two worlds. I remember it just being like a portal. I remember like I felt like my body was in slow motion doing the hypnobirthing tracks, and it's so hard to explain. And I was saying things like, "We're in the Matrix. This isn't real. The rites of passage is the transition. It's the transition phase where you get to 10 centimeters." And I was like, "Motherhood is a rite of passage," but I was truly saying things to Chris and my mum and my midwife, Gay, that the real rite of passage is this transition period, because it's the period that all the midwives talk to you about. They say it's the hardest part. It's the one where you know it's that last piece, and they think the pushing is the easiest part. I will say, yeah, the pushing is the easier part, but still, you know, you literally feel like you're gonna poop yourself when you push in, and oh, there's so much to it, and I will talk about it. I will keep talking about it, but this is the product of what you go through. They're worth every minute. Arr. They really are. Yes, they are. Yes. Anyways, thank you for listening. Thank you for being good, Noah. Mwah. I love you. Say bye-bye to everyone. Say bye-bye. Wave. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. He's just obsessed with my lips. I love you all. Appreciate you all. Thank you for listening.